Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Monday. Hopefully, you had a great weekend. How do you like this weather so far that we had since Saturday afternoon? And yesterday was really, really nice. And even today, dew points are up a little bit south of I-10, but another shot of dry air is going to be pushing in. So enjoy those lower humidities. I know it's not really cooling anything off, but when we get those dew points down and we can get that heat index down below 100 during the latter part of August, that's really something here in South Louisiana. So we're in really good shape with a lot of sunshine, temperature hovering around 91 degrees. It feels more like 99. Dew point 72, humidity 54%. I do think that dew point is going to drop back into the 60s, though, a little bit later this afternoon, as a second push of drier air kind of pushes into the region. So even though it's still going to be pretty hot out there, the comfort level is going to be premium here by August standards, that's for sure. Check it out as we look at the big radar. We've got some moderate to heavy rains that are over there along the I-40 corridor there back into Oklahoma. That's spreading now into western portions of Arkansas. That's more of an upper level piece of energy that's going to kind of slide off toward the east. Meanwhile, at the surface, we've got a frontal boundary that's just outside the offshore waters here in Louisiana, and south of that, that's where the dew points are up. And you got another little shot of some drier air that's trying to push its way into the region today. So I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of cloud cover. We'll call it mostly sunny today. And as far as any rainfall, I really think that's going to be slim to none, 10% or less, and that's going to be right there along the coast. So if you got to do some traveling across Acadiana or across Louisiana today, I think you're going to be in pretty good shape. So a couple of things that we're looking at here locally. We've got our frontal boundary that's out here in the offshore waters, kind of a secondary push of drier air. This is more of an upper level piece of energy that's going to kind of shift off in that direction. You got a pretty good cold front that's here off the East Coast. I'll watch out for any lows that might develop along that and try to scoot their way off toward the northeast. And maybe even sometimes you can get a low that'll develop along a front out over the Gulf waters too. Now, none of that is in the models, but it is always something we like to try to keep an eye on just in case something wants to kind of sneak up on us. But if you've got plans on being out in the Gulf waters or doing some boating, really nice day out there. Light breezes out of the northeast at 5 to 10 knots and seas running about 1 to 2 feet. So as we look at the big picture on the tropics, again, the Gulf, nothing organized to worry about. We've just got that frontal boundary that's going to go ahead and continue to keep the showers and thunderstorms out there. That front is eventually going to kind of wash out, so I do believe that some of that moisture is going to be lifting northward again as we head toward the latter part of the week. And so as we get into Thursday and Friday and the upcoming Labor Day weekend, I think summer's going to rear its ugly head once again. We'll get back to what we would call real summertime weather here in South Louisiana. But as we travel along the beaches, a really pretty day in Panama City Beach this time around. Also, clear skies over at Orange Beach. A hot one there, but again, the air mass is relatively dry. So even out on the beaches during the month of August here, things are pretty comfortable. Out to the west, a little bit more moisture there in the offshore waters of Texas where you got at least some clouds starting to billow out there, and you'll have some scattered showers, some thunderstorms out in the offshore waters off the Texas coast here a little later this afternoon. So really very, very quiet, and this is exactly the way we want to see things. We do have one tropical storm out there, Fernand. If you aren't familiar with Fernand kind of fired up over the course of the weekend. It was part of 90L, which was a disturbance near the Leeward Islands when we left you on Friday. We thought it was going to develop into at least a tropical depression or a weak tropical storm. It's a pretty solid tropical storm now with winds at 60 miles per hour. Then you still have a yellow X there as disturbance 99L, which is really just pretty much become a tropical wave. That's going to continue to drift westward across the Caribbean. At this point, it is not expected to develop, but any remnant energy that moves across the Caribbean certainly would need to be watched. So let's get to it. Tropical Storm Fernand out in the Atlantic Ocean, missed Bermuda, so Bermuda lucking out twice with Aaron last week and Fernand this week. You can see that it's going to continue to drift its way off toward the northeast. At this point, the National Hurricane Center does not believe this is going to become a hurricane. But over the next couple of days, we'll transition to a non-tropical low-pressure area over the northern part of the Atlantic. So good news there. Fernand really not going to be bothering any land areas, and certainly not going to be creating the wake and the rip currents and the beach erosion that Hurricane Aaron did all up and down the East Coast last week. And most of the computer models kind of shove this off toward the Northeast over the next couple of days. And as far as any strengthening, that doesn't look too likely. Most of our intensity models are dragging it down to weekend tropical storm, tropical depression as we go through the next couple of days. So not any worries there about Fernand, just one more name crossed off the list. And to tell you the truth, to see the rest of the tropics as quiet as things are right now, I'd love to see that last for the next 14 weeks, because that's what we've got left in hurricane season. But if we can get through the next 8 like this, I think we would be in good shape. And really, as much as it is exciting for meteorologists to watch tropical systems as they move around, at the same time, we also live here along the Gulf Coast, so we don't want anything coming our way either. But got a little bit of a tropical wave that's working its way across Central America. It's got a significant amount of rain there along the Honduran coast, and that will continue to drift west into parts of Guatemala and Central America. At this point, it looks like most of the energy is going to sneak its way into the Pacific. And right now, we don't expect this to kind of pull into the Bay of Campeche, but it is something that we'll continue to watch as that drifts off toward the west. And then, of course, we've got 99L, which is kind of this mess right here. It's very disorganized. It's more of a tropical wave kind of working westward now. Not expecting any development here, as the wind shear is going to be quite high across the central part of the Caribbean Sea. So even though it's already in a hostile environment for development, conditions are going to be even more unfavorable for any kind of development. But a couple of the computer models hanging on beyond maybe 3 days or so, but most of them give up after 48 hours, and it just becomes a tropical wave moving off toward the west. So not super excited about 99L, but definitely something we'll watch, because any tropical waves that move across the Caribbean, especially the Western Caribbean, is always a kind of interesting because of the conditions, especially with the very warm waters that they have over the western part of the Caribbean. Fortunately, with the intensity guidance, got a couple models that might try to bring this up to a tropical storm, but the consensus of the models really has this thing kind of dying out after about a day and a half to 2 days, and really not strengthening at all. So out in the Atlantic, really beyond that, there's not a whole lot to talk about. We do have a tropical wave that's there in the central part of the Atlantic, and then you've got a couple more blobs of thunderstorms that are going to be working their way off the African coast. But at the same time, and I don't know if you can see it very well on this particular graphic here, but right about in here, there's a pretty significant amount of Saharan dust once again. So hopefully, as these work their way off toward the west, they are inundated by that Saharan dust, and hopefully we won't get any development happening there. So let's just kind of search and see what we've got out in the models here. I really don't think things are going to be too exciting over the next couple of weeks, which is exactly what we want. Doesn't get me a lot of views on YouTube, but it does keep us nice and safe. And as we kind of advance this, you see Fernand kind of sliding off toward the north. You don't see a lot down in the Caribbean either. Maybe some increased winds as 99L works its way westward. But I'm already out here 5 days out, and then continuing to go out. We're at 200 hours, and now we're all the way out to 10 days at that point. And I don't know if any of you saw anything across the Atlantic, the Caribbean, or the Gulf, but I sure didn't. So that's telling me that the next 10 days could be relatively quiet. Again, that's exactly what we would like to see. Let's go back and check the GFS. And again, you got Fernand kind of sliding in there and disappearing. And if you focus your attention on the Caribbean, again, not really anything pulling in. And even out in the Atlantic, as we go out several days here, I'm just not seeing a whole lot. Just a big dominant ridge of high pressure over the central and eastern part of the Atlantic. And the GFS, if it's going to suggest anything, it's going to think about maybe developing something along a frontal boundary here across the East Coast. And even that is negligible here, according to some of the model data that I'm looking at. So I'm going all the way out now. Again, we are out to 10 days. So Again, I don't know if any of you saw anything out in the Atlantic or the Caribbean, but I sure didn't. Maybe a little ripple of low pressure there off the East Coast going out about 5 or 6 days, and maybe another one about 10 days out. But really, again, nothing looking to threaten the Gulf waters, which is really incredible for the fact that we're heading into Labor Day weekend, because it always seems like there's something threatening toward the end of August and especially toward the Labor Day weekend. So let's look at the Canadian model and see if we've got consensus there. Again, you got a couple of lows maybe along a front over the east coast of the U.S., but again, the Caribbean and the Gulf looks to stay relatively clear. Maybe farther out, the Canadians got a little low out in the middle part of the Atlantic, but there we go. We went out 10 days, and there's really not a whole lot to talk about. And we'll finish off with the Icon model. Now, the Icon model only goes out 7 days, but it kind of gives us a little bit of a trend. And again, the Caribbean stays nice and calm. The Gulf stays nice and calm. That ridge of high pressure stays over the eastern Atlantic, so anything that were to fly off the African coast would more likely turn more northerly toward the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean. So even going out 5-7 days here on the Icon model, good news, really don't see a whole lot. Now, does that mean that nothing's going to fire up in the next 10 days? No, but it's promising to see that the models aren't showing anything here over the next week to 10 days. Water temperatures, of course, are quite high, although you may notice over here that there was a little bit of cooling of the waters thanks to Hurricane Erin last week, and I'll go ahead and move on to the next one here. You can see that some of those waters actually are a little below normal. It was able to churn up some of the colder waters from below. Unfortunately, the tropical cyclone heat potential hasn't really dropped off locally over the Caribbean or around the Florida Peninsula or the central and southern part of the Gulf, but that little area there, the western Atlantic, did cool off somewhat, so anything that were to go in that area might not have as good of a chance for development as something working its way off toward the west, which is also why I am still going to continue to watch Disturbance 99L as it moves off toward the west. Even though the atmospheric conditions aren't favorable for anything to develop, it is going to be moving over some extremely warm waters, and I want to watch out for that. Just in case anything were to try to stir up. And really surprising, too, considering we only have one tropical storm out there and one very small disturbance, the wind shear values across most of the Atlantic Basin has really dropped off. There's virtually no shear across the central and southern part of the Gulf. You got some moderate shear across the western part of the Caribbean, but a good part of the Atlantic between Africa and the Windward Islands, really very, very quiet. The only strong wind shear you have is along the east coast in New England, which is normal to have a lot more wind shear there. Second thing that seems to be coming in is there's another blob of Saharan dust. Remember, the Saharan dust kind of took a back seat for a while, but there's a little bit more Saharan dust that's kind of coming off the African coast right now. So hopefully that'll inhibit any tropical waves that are coming off the coast of Africa here in the next several days. So the Eurotropical Formation forecast, I know this is a little bit misleading, but right here is where we have Fernand, and right there is where we have 99L. So that's why the chances are a little bit higher or certain there over where Fernand is, because this map shows where the models think any kind of tropical system could either develop or move through. So you can see those two areas where the higher amounts of data here, and down over here. That's because we already have a couple of tropical systems. But this is through next Monday. So this is going all the way through Labor Day, and you're really seeing things kind of dropping off here off the East Coast and out in the middle part of the Atlantic too. This might be due to 99L here, but again, from the models that we looked at, it just doesn't seem like it wants to work with a whole lot there. Global Tropics Hazard Outlook is going to get updated tomorrow. It'll be a little late for the show tomorrow, but we'll have a new one coming up on Wednesday. But based on week 2 and week 3, it looks like things are going to try to stay relatively quiet, and let's hope that is the case. Because usually this time of the year is when we start to peak out. The peak is September this September the 10th, and we're here in the last week of August. So we are definitely in the peak of hurricane season, and a large part of the Atlantic Basin is open for business during the month of October. But look how this really increases as we get into September. So even though things are quiet right now, and we're really hoping that things are going to stay that way, the chances for new tropical systems, especially at the end of August and going into September, is usually pretty likely. So it's always best to go ahead and have your plan in place. And again, there are a number of things that you can do today where you don't have to fight the crowds for any of the items here at the store, and a lot of the stuff you can do at home. And these are things that you can just kind of take care of today or this week while the weather is quiet. And then if something wants to try to swing in our direction, or maybe we get one of those cones that comes over the Acadiana area, at least you'll have step one in the bag, and you can start worrying about the other things that need to be taken care of if a tropical storm or hurricane decides to head in our direction. So always stay prepared, but let's just continue to hope that everything stays nice and quiet here over the next several days. So this is a little bit of a shorter Let's Talk Tropics this time around. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and turn on those notifications. And don't forget to listen to these great radio stations where you can hear my forecast daily on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. And also follow my social media pages both on Facebook and X. And thanks to everyone who subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. I'm meteorologist Dave Baker. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I'll see you on Tuesday morning for Acadiana Weather Today.